In the United States, the democratic process is the cornerstone of our society. It ensures that citizens have a voice in shaping the future of their country. Before the landmark Supreme Court case of Citizens United vs. Federal Election Commission in 2010, the landscape of campaign finance and political spending in the United States looked significantly different. In the decades leading up to Citizens United, campaign finance laws aimed to limit the influence of money in politics. These regulations focused on restricting the flow of funds from corporations, unions, and wealthy individuals into political campaigns. Congress had a lot of power in regulating federal elections. It was able to limit the kind and amount of money that could be raised, and required disclosures for all of it. Corporations were unable to promote an election candidate with money made from their business, and instead had to create a specific political action committee, which would then be used for political purposes. In 2010, a Supreme Court case rocked the foundations of American democracy. Citizens United v. Federal Election Commission. Today, we delve into the details of this landmark case and its profound impact on our political landscape, as well as what life was like before this ruling. Now, at first, we have to figure out how this case came about anyway. Citizens United, a non-profit organization, created a movie titled Hillary the Movie, which was meant to be an attack on Hillary Clinton in order to derail her campaign. It sparked political controversy during the 2008 election and ended up being the prime reason for a Supreme Court case where regulations of campaign advertising were discussed. Section 441B in the Partisan Campaign Reform Act of 2002 prohibited corporations from publicly advocating for or against a candidate 60 days before an election and 30 days before a primary. Due to the movie taking longer than expected to be produced, it was released within the 60-day threshold of the Reform Act, and thus was deemed illegal. The corporation, Citizens United, requested a preliminary injunction with their district court and argued that the act was unconstitutional restriction of political speech, violating the First Amendment, but they were denied. They then petitioned directly to the Supreme Court. The court case was decided 5-4 in favor of Citizens United. The Supreme Court argued that, quote, the limitations put upon corporations to run political advertisements and communications were not materially different from government censorship of speech towards individuals, end quote. The dissenting opinion was that money should not lead to someone having a louder voice than others, and that would be very unfair and undemocratic. The 4 judges that voted against the court case argued that this decision gave undue influence to a few wealthy individuals and corporations, effectively leading out to drowning out the voices of average citizens. Protests and demonstrations did occur during the Citizens United vs. Federal Election Commission case. The Supreme Court's decision in this case sparked significant public outrage and mobilized various movements and organizations to advocate for campaign finance reform. Protesters voiced their concerns about the political potential for corruption, the unequal distribution of political power, and the perceived threat to the democratic process. They organized rallies, marches, and public demonstrations to raise awareness about the implications of the decision and to call for changes to campaign finance laws. Organizations like Move to Amend and Occupy Wall Street were among those that organized protests specifically targeting the United States decision. These protests aimed to galvanize public support for overturning the ruling and to highlight the need for comprehensive campaign finance reform. This did not matter for the Hillary the Movie, as this court decision came 2 years after its release and the election. Nonetheless, the court case had major implications for how elections are ran today, and Citizens United were ecstatic about their victory. Many people opposing Citizens United were unhappy. Organizations like End Citizens United emerged, striving to limit the influence of money in politics, and advocate for a constitutional amendment to overturn the Citizens United decision. Due to this rule being overturned, corporations, nonprofits, and labor unions are able to spend as much money as needed for political communications up to Election Day. One of the main consequences of Citizens United was the rise of super PACs, or political action committees. These entities can raise unlimited funds to advocate for or against political candidates, as long as they do not cooperate directly with the candidate's campaign. Super PACs quickly became a significant force in elections, flooding airways with political advertisements funded by wealthy donors and corporate interests. This influx of money led to increased negative campaigning, as candidates became less accountable for the content of the ads. In response, grassroots movements advocating for campaign finance reform gained momentum. Although one side may be unhappy and the other satisfied, this case was still a cornerstone to what our current democracy is and is a pillar in the United States Constitution. I appreciate you guys watching and hope you enjoyed.